And by the end of 2023, so January 1st, 2024, I get on the scale. I weigh 195 pounds. I have no inflammation and no more joint or tendon problems. I had energy for days. I would go to bed at like midnight and I would wake up at 4 a.m. wide awake with energy ready to go. And I did that for like 8 months straight. Bitcoin aligned with what I was trying to do with food, with health, with my life in general. I can't go back to a 9 to 5 sitting under fluorescent lights all day. I would rather be out in the West Texas patch, putting miners up on a rack in a container in 110 degree heat. Like, that's what I would rather do. So whether that makes me money or not, that's what I'm going to do. And that's what I did. And I'm still, alive and kicking.
People are valuing like their sovereignty and their freedom a little bit more. Like, you see this with a lot of Zoomers. They see a lot of like the unaffordability of things, and why would I go work under fluorescent lights from 9 to 5 if I'm not gonna be able to afford the life I want to live anyways? So
Yes.
Let me just actually take the freedom, a little bit of freedom I have now, and I'll just try to be creative with it.
That feeling of freedom and sovereignty is like having FU money without having the dollars.
You're listening to the Great Reassessment Podcast.
Are you stacking Bitcoin but still no friends? It's time to download Club Orange, the home base for true Bitcoiners. With Club Orange, you can ditch the noise, the lonely doom scrolling, and join a real in-person community built for people who actually get it. You can enjoy time spent with local Bitcoiners who believe in the same sound money principles as you do. I've been using it for almost 2 years. I've been able to attend over 24 local meetups, and I've created lifelong friendships. Download Club Orange today and get connected. Are you tired of eating fiat food? Get your beef and pork today from Acme Acres in Spirit Lake, Idaho, where every cow is grass-fed, vaccine-free, and raised the way nature intended. My buddy Jason Hanley, he runs the place, and yeah, they even accept Bitcoin. Guys, I eat this meat, I feed it to my kids. It's amazing. You gotta try it. It's pure beef, no nonsense, shipped nationwide. Visit acmeacres.us today and taste what sound money should taste like. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Great Reassessment. I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. I am here with David Branscum, aka Rebel in Texas, on Twitter. David, it's nice to meet you and have you here today.
Hey, nice to see you again. How are you?
Good. Yeah, I should have said again because we actually have met in person once. We met at BTC in DC and at the Bitcoin conference. And so, how's life been? How was your Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving was good. I'm in Texas, so we smoked a turkey and a brisket. That's usually how it works in our family. So I had about 12 pounds of turkey, 12 pounds of brisket. I think I'm just now finishing up the brisket with using what's left for, chopped beef, mix a little bit of like sauce with it and, eat it on a bun kind of thing. I just eat it out of a bowl because I'm mostly carnivore, but, my boys are... I got 2 teenage boys, and brisket is a life hack if you have teenage boys, by the way. You can get it for cheap and you can cook a lot of it. And if it's smoked right, it just keeps and that sort of thing. So
Even after like a few days?
it'll last the stuff I've got in the fridge, it's probably a little tiny chunk now that I'm going to finish off at lunch. But I smoked that the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So that tells you it'll keep a couple weeks if you smoke it right. So
I might have to get some tips from you because my wife and I, we bought half a cow and I have like a 15-pound brisket in my freezer, and I'm just so nervous to try to smoke this for the first time because I just don't want to mess it up. It's an expensive piece of meat, and so is it possible to do it perfect on your first try?
Maybe not perfect, but I can definitely keep it edible for you. We could do an entire podcast on just smoking a brisket if you want.
No, I'm fascinated by the topic. I think brisket's a great Thanksgiving option. I don't think enough people do it, and so I'm happy you said that because it's love meat.
I mean, honestly, it's probably close to the same price turkeys get. I mean, you can get it for a good price per pound. But I did ruin a few briskets when I first started. I was the same. I was nervous and stuff like that. But I'm involved with the Beef Initiative and Texas Slim. I don't know if you've met those guys, but their motto is shake a rancher's hand, right? Their goal is to take Bitcoiners and connect them directly with the ranchers and or farmers, right? But specifically on the meat side. And there's a lot of fiat problems in the world. And one of those is consolidation of our, food supply. The 3 largest meat packers in the country are all owned by BlackRock. There's a lot of funny shenanigans going on. A lot of times when you get ground beef that says it's local or it's a USDA registered product, all this kind of stuff. There's sometimes 40 or 50 different cows in the ground beef. There's never and those most of those cows were never even in the United States, right? So they play these same shenanigans as they do in manufacturing. If 51% of the meat was, born and raised in the United States, it qualifies. But the other 49% could be cows that have spent most of their life outside of the country. South America is a big one. So there's something, it's really important to kind of just understand, obviously where your food comes from, what you're eating. And one of the things that being a Bitcoiner has taught me is you don't trust, you verify. So I've kind of gone down that rabbit hole. I'm about 95% carnivore. I do have cheat a little bit with sugar and carbs from time to time, but most of the time I just eat protein. And so that's a very important thing to me. So when you start talking about brisket and stuff like that, that is really meat, is especially beef. And you said you bought half a beef, right? Like half a cow. That is a cheat code for people who are, struggling to make ends meet, to making sure they get the right nutrition, to fix health problems. All of this kind of stuff can be solved by whole, natural, locally sourced food. And as a Bitcoiner, I think it's imperative that we, kind of help push those positive directions to kind of fix and create new systems out of those, to walk away from the broken ones and things like that. It ties into food, healthcare, life, strength, longevity, all of it. So it's something I'm very passionate about. And being a Bitcoiner for the last few years has given me the means and the ability to be able to focus on those more important issues. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that was probably the most beautiful segue into Bitcoin from Brisket I think I've ever heard. That was perfect. So, I mean, you're right. Like, there's all the as a Bitcoiner, the things we care about. You said don't trust, verify.
Yeah.
And when you start, even if it's just with Bitcoin, like that mantra tends to bleed out into other areas.
Yes.
And you go down these rabbit holes of just like, wait, what am I eating? And so you mentioned the Beast Initiative, and I have heard of them. And so what do you do with that?
Sure. Right now, I'm mainly a proponent, but when I first got into Bitcoin, I'm kind of one of these rare cases where I didn't find Bitcoin. It kind of found me, which is nice. I just needed a job, like a fiat job. And I was desperate. And I got a job with my neighbor across the street. He was the CEO of an immersion cooling company at the time. And they had actually just sold like 200 megawatts worth of immersion cooling to the publicly traded miner Riot, right? So it was an established company, pretty good, first little kick in revenue and things like that. And I came on to do business development for them. Well, then I just started networking and going to events and trying to find, other Bitcoin miners that we could work with. And the first event, actually the first deal I had with the company also happened at this event. I drove down to Houston because it was just the next closest one. It was Parker Lewis, one of the founders at Unchained, wrote the book Gradually, Then All of a Sudden, or Gradually, Then Suddenly. I always say it wrong. And he was putting on a Bitcoin event in Houston. And I went to just kind of network and see, I was like, I was learning about it. What's this all about? And he had brought in, maybe it was the very first event, maybe it was another one, but he had brought in Texas Slim from the Beef Initiative. Texas Slim is, if you conjure up an old white-haired rock star cowboy, he's probably about as quintessential as it gets, right? Like super slim guy, 6', 6'1", but super slender, long, white, straight hair, wearing his tinted sunglasses and a black cowboy
Does he kind
hat.
of look like maybe like a tall Willie Nelson, maybe?
Yeah, well, yeah, just not the beard, right? Like the clean shaven and stuff. Yeah, but yeah, kind of like that, right? It just, looks like he was on the cover of one of those old dime store cowboy novels. You know what I mean? He's like very, and I was like, man, this guy's a character, right? But then he starts talking and explaining the problems with beef, and I had just really gone into beef. I wasn't full carnivore yet, but I'd always been a huge fan of briskets and steak and any kind of beef. I was just always drawn to it. I like to learn how to butcher. I took a really short class on just not actually butchering, but like how they butcher up a cow and, with different cuts and things. He just, man, when he laid into, I kind of went down that rabbit hole before I even went down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, which is crazy. I was like, man, so you're telling me the big food manufacturers manage all of this stuff, and it's all centralized and controlled. I was like, well, hell, man, this is Bitcoin, right? Like we're fighting against the fiat games, we're fighting against the centralization. We don't know who's controlling or where, our food or where we're getting it from, and the rules and regulations are just destroying the quality of it and all that kind of stuff. All this government interference, it's not necessary. He told me one thing very interesting. So I'm in Texas. I have been my whole life. At one point, there's like 280 counties in Texas, right? Texas is big. So all these little counties, they have, there used to be one meat processing butcher, like large scale butcher processor per county in Texas. There's like 280 of them, right? This was as little as like maybe 30 years ago. Okay. We now have 3 independent meat processors in Texas.
How many?
3. We went from
3?
like 280 something down to 3 independent, family-run, local meat processors. Now, since he's starting this initiative, it's kind of building up a little bit. We probably got like a dozen, right? But the fact of the matter is 99.9% of the beef in Texas gets processed by 3 locations outside of Texas, and they're all owned by BlackRock, right? So this is, and they play these games where they send the stuff out of the country. He's telling me all this stuff, and I just go completely down that rabbit hole. So right off the bat, I'm like, who's my local you go to their website and you find a local rancher. You can go shake his hand. You can go meet the family. You can go see their process. You can verify, is it grain fed? Is it grass fed? Are they using antibiotics? Are they not? Kind of things like that. And you can see it once you really start looking for it. You can see it in the cuts of meat. The meat may not look as pretty because they don't spray it with stuff to keep it nice and shiny red. Meat is naturally a darker color anyway. It immediately starts oxidizing once you butcher it, right? So you're okay. You learn to see, well, that bright red stuff is not actually very healthy for me. I'm okay with this kind of purpley black and blue looking meat because I actually know it's healthier. You also start looking at the fat. When you eat a dairy cow versus a beef only cow, chances are it's all grass fed also. And so the fat is more yellow. So you start to learn these things and you start to see, you're like, oh, this is a better cut than this. And I'll even at the grocery store, if I'm in a bind and I just need to grab something quick, I will, I can look at a cut of beef and be like, oh, that's from this end of the loin, and this one's from the other end. And so I'm actually going to get more red meat here. I'm going to get maybe a little more marbling. It's like you start learning these things, and it just makes you better at, selecting what goes into your body, which is ultimately what controls health and everything else. So I don't do a whole lot with them yet. We're talking about a couple of different projects. They're doing some stuff with El Salvador. They're working with Stacey Herbert down there. We're very close to probably officially announcing some things, right? But like up to this point, I've just been a huge proponent of what they're doing, how they do it. And it is a decentralization of beef. And being in Texas, man, it's necessary.
Yeah.
I'm right here in the heart of it. So,
well,
yeah.
I know a little bit about what they do because where I buy my meat from now, over here in North Idaho, I'm not in North Idaho, I'm in Eastern Washington, but I can get there in like 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I orange pilled the rancher, the guy who's in charge of the whole operation, and he's in touch with Beef Initiative now. So I know they're helping him out with some social media things and stuff like that. And it's just been, so I'm really stoked about that. Why did you decide to go full like carnivore?
I was already so into meat and protein. It was always the bulk of my diet anyway. I just liked it. I looked up one day after doing that job. I actually took it was a good trip. It was a work trip. I left that company and then went to Norway with some other Bitcoiners for an event. They were opening a Bitcoin mining site in Norway. So we flew into Trondheim and then drove like an hour and a half north up the coast. And I remember getting back and people were sharing pictures and stuff like that. And I looked at this picture of me and I was wearing a vest and things, but we were going to go fishing and I didn't want to wear like jeans on a boat, so it was cold, so I wore shorts and tennis shoes, and I had this like vest on, and I just remember, and a backpack on. I just looked at myself and was like, what happened? Right? Like it was one of those aha moments where you see yourself in the mirror and you're like, why do I look like this? This is unacceptable kind of thing. And I was the heaviest I'd been in my entire life. Not like grossly overweight, right? I was 235 pounds, but I'm about 6 foot tall, right? So it wasn't just grossly overweight, but man, I just looked in bad shape. I looked unhealthy, sad, and sick. And one of the guys actually went on that trip, was talking about going carnivore. He had found carnivore, Dr. Sean Baker online and stuff like that. I was like, man, I love meat. This carnivore diet sounds awesome. Let's give it a try. And it was literally that easy. And so kind of leading up to the end of the year in 2022, we were in a Bitcoin bear market, right? I was in the thick of it. I was struggling. It was a rough year, Christmas that year. In fact, that 2022 is also when I'd been orange pilled, not by anyone in particular, but through the job working with Bitcoiners. These guys would just say stuff while I'm, on the phone with them or working with them or whatever. And I'd be like, oh yeah. And I'd write down that thing. And it's like, I got to look up the mempool later. It's like, I didn't know anything about it. And so I dollar cost averaged down in 2022. And then I went all in hard when it hit 20,000. And I thought to myself, oh man, yeah, I was still thinking from an investment standpoint. I was like, 60% drawdown. Why would it possibly go any lower? Right. And then I cashed out everything I had and went all into it. And then it went down from 20,000 to 16. And I was like, oh my God, I've destroyed my life again, whatever. I was like, I can't believe this. And so I would like to be able to say that I knew what I had and I hodled because I believed. I didn't. I was scared and I gave up. Like, I was like, I can't win the dollar game. I can't win the Bitcoin game. I can't win. Right. So I'd like to say I just hodled, but I didn't. I closed all accounts for the entire month of November and December. I didn't look at bank accounts. I didn't look at credit. I had nothing.
So wait, did you take a loss did you sell the Bitcoin at 16,000?
No, that's what I'm saying. I hodled it, but not because I knew what I had and because I, had the courage and diamond hands. I just literally gave up on life. I was like, I'm never going to win. So I was like, I'm not going to move it out. I walked away from all financial management, which is not a good thing, right? Like, my credit card bills would hit and I didn't even pay them. I let them go a month, it's like all this crap, right? It was just bad. But I thought my life was over. I did. And then in January, I was like, okay, I've had a little too much to drink. We got through the holidays with the family. I need to clean myself up and get back on the horse and, try to do something. And so I logged into all these accounts and I was like, oh, Bitcoin's back above DK. All right, good. All right. So I was like, I'm not going to sell anything yet. I'll hold on to it a little bit, but so let's pay bills. Let's get the, things caught up or whatever. I did cash out a little bit to make sure, because I had, I had finance charges for a couple months on the credit cards and all that stuff. So got it out, and then got back to zero on the credit cards and things like that. And then it just kept creeping up and creeping up. And I was like, well, this is interesting. 2022 is when I had discovered the carnivore. And so I started on January 1st, 2023. So I'm on carnivore. All I'm having for the first 2 weeks was ribeye steaks. I would take like a big 1 to 16 ounce to 18 ounce ribeye steak. I'd cut it into thirds, and I'd eat a third in the morning, a third at lunch, and a third. So I was eating 6 ounces at each sitting. Sometimes I'd have eggs and bacon, and that was all I ate. And in the first started at 235 pounds. The first week I lost 12 pounds. And I was like, what is going on? Well, I realized, I was cutting out the sodas. I was cutting out the sugar. I was cutting out all the refined carbs. I was cutting all of that out, right? So I was like, I'm just eating healthier, right? It's not just the carnivore. I'm just eating healthier, right? But as I continued down that road for the year, Bitcoin, I was working little odd jobs for Bitcoiners and trying to do little consultant gigs and things like that. And whenever I had a little extra money, I would throw it into Bitcoin as it was creeping up in 23. And I was going on walks. I didn't work out, lift weights at all in 2023. I just wanted to see how light I could get. And so going all carnivore and walking 1 to 2 hours a day, I would put on my headphones and I'd listen to like the What Is Money podcast. I'd listen to Simply Bitcoin. I'd do, BTC sessions, reviews, and I'd listen to those and watch those. And I learned about cold storage and, got my first cold card and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just getting more and more orange pilled, right, every day. And I'm losing weight and I'm feeling good. I'm feeling healthy and all that kind of stuff. And by the end of 2023, so January 1st, 2024, I get on the scale. I weigh 195 pounds.
Nice.
I have no inflammation and no more joint or tendon problems. I had energy for days. I would go to bed at like midnight and I would wake up at 4 a.m. wide awake with energy ready to go. And I did that for like 8 months straight. It was insane. And I was dialed in at work, when I did a little bit of a stint as a kind of a W-2 employee with a guy, for a while. And I was just, everything was clear, right? I was investing in Bitcoin. I knew what I had. It was going up. I was losing weight. I was feeling better. Everything was moving the right direction. So when you get, and I think a lot of it, well, I don't want to say Bitcoin was just the only catalyst, right? But Bitcoin aligned with what I was trying to do with food, with health, with my life in general. I was reevaluating bad relationships, bad work relationships, all of these kinds of things. And I was cutting people out of my life and pulling, the right people closer in. It's like it just all fed together. So 23 and 24 were incredible years for me. 25 has been a little bit of a challenge, but still not, bad. That's a good thing. Being uncomfortable is what is the catalyst for those changes, right? So in 2025, I did very well in 23 and 24 with, Bitcoin value purchasing power going up, but then also just my work and some other projects and things. I did very well income wise. And in 2025, it's been slow, but in a very positive way, right? So now I'm like, this year I've been able to still focus on being carnivore, but also I went back to the gym and started lifting, right? So I'm building muscle. I'm feeling stronger. I'm sleeping very well. I've been able to kind of go down more rabbit holes. I went down like the sunscreen and cosmetics industry rabbit hole, and how terrible
Yeah.
pheromones cologne and perfume, and how much damage all that stuff is doing to our body. So like this last year in the summer, I would work from the pool. I would go for my walk just in shorts, right? No t-shirt, nothing, and get in the middle of the day at like 11 a.m. and get direct sunlight. And I would walk from my house to the pool, the community pool. And then I would sit there on a daylight computer, right? So you'd see it in the sun. And I would work and take phone calls from the pool. And I'd get 3 or 4 hours of sun a day. And I've never felt better. No sunscreen at all, right? No burning, nothing. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I actually think so. My wife, she started making tallow products just for fun at home. And one of the things that she was making is homemade sunscreen, which is incredibly simple to make. You just need beef tallow, some beeswax, organic beeswax, and some zinc oxide. And
Tiny
it
bit of
actually,
zinc.
yeah, tiny bit of zinc. And it actually has a lot of benefits for burns and things like
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
Like not sunburns, but like if you maybe burn yourself on the stove, you put a
Yeah.
little bit of this on there. It's
Yeah.
incredibly helpful, but it does actually prevent sunburns, and it doesn't have like no, there's 3 simple ingredients that are actually your body can actually absorb.
Yes.
But I mean, all these other topical sunscreens that have all these synthetic chemicals and seed oils that like we don't know how those are reacting when they come into contact with light and what they're doing on the surface of your skin.
Sure.
Combine that with a terrible diet, like that's a recipe for disaster.
I think, and we don't need to go into all the science in it, right? But I found a good video online. The guy kind of explained it, and I think he's accurate. I think that your wife would find that if she took the zinc oxide completely out and literally just used beef tallow, I think 2 things happen. One, I believe that your body is naturally absorbing that beef tallow, right? It's your skin is absorbing it and pulling it into those top layers, right? And so that fat and that collagen that's still left in there is absorbed into your skin. For me, because I was only eating red meat, right? Like 99.9% of the time, my body naturally had a lot of that in my skin. So eventually I got to a point where I wouldn't burn and I didn't need any sunscreen. It was because I was getting that, right? So I think that over time you can even eventually you should phase out that zinc and
Yeah,
just
think about
literally
it.
use the beef tallow. Now, if you're depending on her diet and, things like that, maybe she'll burn for a little while, right? You will have to probably go through that in the very beginning. But this was my third year or let's say 23, 20, yeah, third year summer in a row where I didn't use a single bit of sunscreen and I never had a burn. And, I spent 1 week at a Bitcoin conference actually in Las Vegas with the guy Tone Vays. I don't know if you know Tone, but he puts on this unconfiscatable conference, right? Well, it's in Vegas, kind of off, not on the strip, like in the downtown area. But we were at this one, I think Cirque has a area called Stadia Swim, where it's like stadium pools and big TV screens so you can see, sports and stuff like that. And the sun is behind the screen, obviously, so it's not glaring. But then behind you is a giant hotel that's all mirrored glass, right? So you're standing there in the pool, the sun is hitting you this way, and then it's bouncing off this way, reflecting and hitting you in the back, right? And there was a bunch of people there, even Bitcoiners and stuff, that are just like, oh yeah, let's make sure and use some sunscreen. So that spray, it's like, hey, do you need some? I'm like, no, I think I'm okay. I was out there for 8 straight hours of sun in these like wading pools, and I definitely got a ton of sun. I was definitely a little tiny bit dehydrated, but no burn. Like no burn at all.
And that's
It
interesting
was
because
that hard.
sometimes people say that you can get burned worse in the water because it's reflecting off the water. Like I've heard that. I don't know if it's true, but it seems consistent. Like, cause I remember times where I've been swimming and I feel like the burns have been a little bit more intensified.
I probably, I don't know. I just know that like I was hit both ways, right? And I definitely got sun. Like people were like, oh man, you got some color. Does it hurt? And I'm like, no, like it was no actual physical burn.
Mm-hmm.
I did look a little redder than, a lot more color than normal for about 24 hours. But by the next evening, like it was just down to a nice, tan brown. It
Yeah,
was
nice, a
crazy.
good, perfect tan.
It was
Well, that's
crazy.
sweet.
So yeah, go down that rabbit hole. Tell her to go down
Yeah,
and yeah.
definitely. I know you're involved in mining, and that's kind of what we were talking about in DC. So, how are you involved with mining? What pulled you into mining, and what excites you about it?
Sure. Well, I had a little bit of experience with working at Dell years ago, so I kind of understood the basics of data center management and hardware and things like that on more traditional data centers. And as I mentioned earlier, I got this job with the Immersion cooling company, and I thought I was just going to sell Immersion to traditional data centers. Turns out they weren't ready. They're still not ready. They may never be ready. They may skip over Immersion and go straight to liquid at the chip technology, depending. But I came in thinking that's what I was doing, and that industry was not ready. So I was spinning my wheels, wasting time trying to reach out to these traditional data center
Can you
companies.
explain what immersion cooling is?
Sure, it's a dielectric fluid. So any sort of liquid that doesn't conduct electricity. A lot of them are some sort of carbon-based fluid. So alpha polyolefins, oils and those kinds of, the easiest way to say it was it's like a really super clean, pure kind of motor oil, right? The viscosity is a little bit different, but the concept is the same. Motor oil doesn't just lubricate. It takes in the heat from an engine and is pushed through a cooler, right, that cools it off. So sometimes that's done through a heat exchanger with water, and then the water releases the air. Sometimes it's just through a radiator itself, but that's what oil does is it pulls it allows it to move the heat away from the parts that are the friction and the explosions that are creating the heat and allow it to release the heat somewhere else so it doesn't damage all of those components. Immersion cooling works the same way. You can literally take a computer piece of equipment. You can do it with anything, but we were obviously doing it with Bitcoin mining ASICs, and you would put it in the bath of this oil. And instead of pumping air through it, you would turn it up and down. And so the cool oil would come in the bottom where the fans were normally taking in air, and it would come through, it would pump it through and then raise the oil up to where it would catch the heat and pull it up. And then there would be kind of a waterfall called a weir that it would roll over. And then you would take that and transport it somewhere else and dissipate the heat. So there's two kinds. There's more than that. Single phase meant, it wasn't going to evaporate. This dielectric fluid was just staying in the liquid phase the whole time. And then you can either put it through a heat exchanger with water and then use the water to release it, because water releases heat, dissipates heat a lot better than the oil does. Or you have what's called a single loop, where that loop of oil would go through immediately through a radiator, and fans would pull the air through to dissipate the heat into the air. That's actually how I got started in Bitcoin mining. I'm more of a tactile, infrastructure kind of guy. I'm not really boots on the ground, but I do like getting out on the sites and, helping out from kind of a general contractor perspective. But working with that company taught me how to deploy large scale Bitcoin mining deployments, both in air, immersion, and now liquid at the chip, hydro cooling. And so, and I guess to describe that one, that's actually where they flow just straight water through heat plates that are directly attached to the chips where all the heat is generated, right? The same way that, your car radiator does that with your engine block. So it got me introduced to that. And I thought I was going to work with traditional data centers, but they're not ready for that technology. The only guys that were ready for this technology were crazy cowboy Bitcoiners, right? Out in West Texas that were going into the middle of nowhere and plugging in miners and, and they were in oil fields using excess gas to turn into using generators to make power. And I was like, these guys are crazy. This is so much more fun. And I had a falling out with that company and left. And I was like, man, I don't know what I want to do. Right? Like I don't know if I don't know enough about this to really be an expert, but man, it's so much fun. These are the guys I want to work with. So I went to Mining Disrupt. They put me on a panel as an immersion cooling consultant with a bunch of other immersion cooling companies. And a couple guys saw me, gave me my first gig, and I got to help design and build a 8 megawatt of Bitcoin mining in North Carolina. The 8 megawatts was air and 8 megawatts was immersion. And so I got to help design and work directly with the fabricator and the manufacturer of the immersion, tweaking that to make sure it was, fully optimized. It was just a budget reason. The reason we did half and half. It wasn't like we were trying to test it and things like that. They did get some good research numbers out of that, having those two running right next to each other, But that was my first foray into building a Bitcoin mine and designing it. But I took about 90 days. It was a paid education, which was great. They gave me 90 days and I put together estimates, cost, all of the build plans, Gantt charts, all of it. And that was my first kind of really gig independently on my own. And I learned a ton. If they hadn't given me that job, I don't know, where I'd be right now. So did that in 90 days. And then they said, well, do you want to work? Do you want to move to North Carolina and help us run it? I'm like, no, I don't. I'm in Texas. I like Texas. I'm going to stay here. So they had a good guy that came on and helped them finish, building and deploying and all that kind of good stuff. And I've just kind of been working with independent projects ever since. I did an off-grid gas site. It was good. It was actually a gentleman who I had sold him some stuff that, wasn't working. It was problematic for him. And so he eventually got it replaced. And I went and worked for free on site to try to, kind of help make his site right and make it up and running. And it was just, at that point, I was just in a position where it's like, whether I got paid or not, I needed to learn. Right. The whole reason I got into this was because I had lost everything in 2019 and I literally had gone down to, no money, credit card debt, didn't know what to do. Had to take out a loan from my father-in-law, to pay it off, stuff like that. And I had gone to work at Domino's because I had tried to find a job and couldn't find a job right before the pandemic. And then the pandemic hit and it turns out Domino's was pretty much the only job I could have. I was making $6,000 a month delivering pizzas for Domino's because early in 2020, that was the only delivery food service, right? They all kind
Hmm.
of grew from there, but that was the only one. So it ended up being a blessing, but very humbling. And I was just desperate for a job. And I did nothing for, about a year and a half other than just, delivering pizzas. But I was like listening to podcasts in my car. I was teaching myself other languages just for fun. It was like I was staying busy and I was excited to learn new things again. And then I decided to build a raised grow bed in my backyard because in a house we have a small koi pond that we've always enjoyed and liked. And so I decided I was going to build a raised grow bed. As I'm doing that, my neighbor across the street comes to ask me what I'm doing, right? Because he sees me out in my garage 3 or 4 days a week, with pipes and frames and, cutting wood and 2x4s and all this stuff. He comes to see it and turns out, and he's asking me about it. So I'm telling him, it's like, well, I calculated the flow rate. I did this. Here's the volume of it. It's a flood and drain system. So it floods, takes, 3 minutes to fill up and then it takes 60 seconds to drop. So like the roots are constantly getting oxygen and water. It's really good and healthy for them, all this stuff. And he's like, are you an engineer? I said, no, I just like figuring stuff out. Right. Well, he was the CEO of that Immersion company at the time. So that's how I got that job. So I tell people it's not like, Bitcoin specifically or, Carnivore specifically or some other, thing came into my life and changed it. The idea that I needed to do something and learn something new was the catalyst. You know what I mean? I had been sitting dormant, not challenging myself, thinking everything was fine and I was comfortable until 2019 when I lost everything. Being uncomfortable, that terrible, quote unquote, terrible thing that at the time, I didn't think I was going to survive through, ended up being, the catalyst and the best thing for me to realign and help me understand, I just need to keep learning. If you sit in complacency, you're dying. You're on your way
Let me
out.
comment on that really quick because
Sure.
I really like that story. That's really inspiring, actually. And some people think that opportunities just never come to them. They just have a string of bad luck. But I believe that you have to create your own luck. And it's by being on the move. It's by being productive. It's by networking. It's by learning a new skill. It's by starting a new project that you don't know where it's going to end up. But it might end up just introducing you to somebody who can offer you an opportunity to start this.
Yeah.
So, like starting that garden in your backyard, it's not even really connected to Bitcoin mining or anything like that. But it's like when people who see other people taking initiative and starting projects, like the ability to carry a project through, like those are all really attractive characteristics and traits that are needed, and they set you up. And like honestly, the way God works, like you never know what might come from an opportunity. And so I like that's really cool.
Yeah, it's I'm no longer a believer in luck, right? I understand odds and I understand mathematics, and Bitcoin's taught me that, right? So you may call it, if you want to go to play blackjack, or poker in Vegas and you call it luck, you're the wrong person to be going. If you sit down, if you want to play blackjack and gamble, that's fine. Just you need to know the odds, right? You need to know the mathematics. Over a long enough time frame, everything evens out, which is the order of the universe, right? So there's no such thing as luck. It's just continuing to show up until the right thing happens. And when I left that company, it wasn't a good leaving, right? I was very frustrated with the situation. And a part of me wanted to say, okay, I'm just going to go back and try to find another job. Maybe I can get a job back at Dell or something and, go crawling back kind of thing to these other industries that I'd worked in before. But man, it was just soul crushing to think about doing that. But I also thought, man, I can't afford to just take some random trip to Miami to go to a Bitcoin conference that I have, I got to spend a few $1,000s to go to between tickets and airfare and everything. I can't afford to do that. And then one of these Bitcoiners I've been working with, who's become a very good friend, was like, hey, I'm sponsoring. I'll just give you one of my tickets. They're giving me like 6 tickets. We're not taking that many guys. You can have. I was like, oh, okay, great. And then he said, hey, we need to get you some exposure. He said, because I'm sponsoring, let me introduce you to these guys and have them put you on a panel. So they got me on a panel. right? And that panel led to something else. And it was one of those leaps of faith where I was just like, I remember staying in offsite. I couldn't afford the nice hotel where they were. I say nice hotel. I'll say this, and some of the people that have stayed there are like, that's not a nice hotel. I was that bad off. I had points from like a hotel that was like a 10-minute walk from there. So I was like, I just got to stay over there, right? So I stayed over there. I paid for the flight, and I was like, man. And then I'll never forget the first day. Like I saw these guys at their booth and was like, hey, it's like, hey, I'm gonna go make the rounds, and I disappeared. Because I talked to every single person who works in the industry there to see if there was an opportunity for me to work with them or a way for me to make money, earn income. I was working, and it was 2 straight days like that of, 10 hours on my feet, moving from place to place, following up with people, meeting new people, and then say, hey, you should talk to this guy, and introducing. It's like all that stuff. I just kept hustling, right? You just keep hustling because that's what it takes. If you have somebody say, you look at the guys like Henry Ford, Jeff Bezos, Michael Dell, like all this stuff, right? Everybody sees the big win and they think that you got lucky, right? It's like, oh, you just happened to get lucky. No, they kept working on the sense and focused, when everybody else said they were absolutely nuts. Everybody else said they were crazy because they were losing money over and over and over again. So the idea is not that you have to pick the right thing and get it right. You just literally have to keep working on your thing until it becomes the right thing. And that's the hardest message to get. You really can't figure it out unless you go through it. So I just, at some point, somewhere in there, it just clicked in my head. I can't go back to a 9 to 5 sitting under fluorescent lights all day. I would rather be out in the West Texas patch, putting miners up on a rack in a container in 110-degree heat. Like that's what I would rather do. So whether that makes me money or not, that's what I'm going to do. And that's what I did. And I'm still, alive and kicking. I've done well for myself income wise, but man, and there's still a lot more, and a long way to go. And so
there seems to be a shift kind of happening, especially I would say, everybody underneath the boomer generation, like in today's world, people are valuing like their sovereignty and their freedom a little bit more. Like you see this with a lot of Zoomers. They see a lot of like the unaffordability of things, and why would I go work under fluorescent lights from 9 to 5 if I'm not going to be able to afford the life I want to live anyways? So let me just actually take the freedom, the little bit of freedom I have now, and I'll just try to be creative with it. And maybe that's not the perfect attitude, but I think they're onto something where, and I've kind of experienced this as well. It's like I've made less money, but had my own freedom. Like nobody's able to fire me, and it's an incredibly liberating feeling.
Yes,
and I don't think people want to trade that for 9 to 5 servitude, and you still can't really afford anything anyways. But
correct.
I maybe have a fighting chance here if I can figure something out.
It's
kind of forging my own path.
Yeah, it's a broken system, and it worked for the most part for the boomer generation, right? Because they were coming out of a time of it's called a boomer generation because they're coming out of a time that was set up for an economic boom, right? They'd already gone through the Great Depression, they'd gone through a couple world wars, and now it was like we had entered that turning, right, where all of the chaos had happened. And so now everybody was focused on, okay, let's put things in order. Let's to each his own, in accordance to their needs, in accordance to their means. It was like, work hard. I will work with you, and we will both benefit, and we can live our lives. And I'm not going to tell you how to live your life, and you're not going to tell me how to live mine. Right. It was this very interesting attitude, but still had a lot of accountability to it. Right. And so my dad grew up during that time, and he's told me on multiple occasions, thank God I was born in that time because I was able to raise a family of 4 on a single income. It wasn't always easy. It wasn't always great, but he's like, I wouldn't have been able to do that in today's time. And so it did work for a lot of them. And as they're into the age now where they're starting to leave this earth, it's like, they kind of got through it, right? We're coming into that turning, right? the hard times turning. And people think we've already been through it. I don't think we have. I think we're coming into it, unfortunately. So I'm very nervous for my, boys who are, born in 06 and 2010, right? So that gives you kind of their age group there. They're past the millennials. I guess that's a Zoomer. Is that, or
Yeah, I think
maybe
Zoomers,
Gen Y or whatever.
they would be every website you check is just a little different, but I'm pretty sure Zoomer is like 1997 to like 2012 or 2013
Yeah, that sounds
or
right.
something
That
like that.
sounds right. That sounds right. So they are, yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah. So I'm X. I have a sister who's 13 years younger than me. She's a millennial, and then my boys are Z. Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
But they, I'm worried about that. But I'm kind of in this boat the same way, even though I'm in my 40s, closer to 50, right? Than I'm 40 now. I thought it's like you look at taxes and once you start to learn inflation, you're like, taxes take roughly. Breedlove was on with Peter McCormick not too long ago, and I saw this clip today on X this morning that, and he talks about how taxes basically steal 100 days of your life. And then when you couple that with, or 100 days of your life every year, and then you couple that with with inflation, the US dollar in the last couple hundred years or inflation since the Federal Reserve, just since the Federal Reserve, right, has stolen millions of years from the US people, right? Millions of years of time from the US people. And so you start to look at that and you're like, at some point, we're going to be working, a year, and we're not going to be able to keep any of it, right? The time is going to be completely lost. And in fact, we're going to be in more debt than what we have. It's a system designed to destroy you. And so, and it's not, and people are like, oh, well, it's terrible. It's happening. We need to fix it. No. It was designed to do that. Right. And once you realize that, it can become very dystopian, right? You're like, oh, there's no hope. There's no reason for me to work at all. And so you can go in this vicious downward spiral of, hey, well, I need to work to pay for my life, to pay for food, but working doesn't get me ahead. It just gets me more debt. And then if I don't work and I get, unemployment, or maybe they end up doing universal basic income. You can lose all hope very quickly. So the key is to stay prudent. When you have windfalls or you have little good things, wake up 3 or 4 years later and their system isn't working on you, right? The design is flawed, and Bitcoin really is the exit out of that system, right? And it's a very difficult spot for someone to be in that is young, just coming out into the workforce, because, wanting to strike out on their own, wanting to build their own family, create their own identity. If you don't have Bitcoin, you're not going to be able to. You're just not.
You talk about AI, right? And like what a lot of people are projecting is what the future is going to look like with AI and robots and a lot of automation. And many people are worried that pretty intelligent people who have average skills, who are willing to work, are not going to be able to work because, and I don't know how, maybe we're still 20, 30 years away from this, but let's just say it's closer. Combine that with people who have very little purchasing power. What will people do? What type of world will that usher in? And a lot of people are speculating that it's going to return to a type of feudal lordship sort of type of world where there's a few really rich people who own everything and most people have nothing, and they're going to have to maybe work on somebody's region or their plot of land, and like, because they don't have that many skills or they did, but a lot of it's just been replaced. So what are your gut instincts about the future with AI, robots, intense automation, and AI and all that?
So let's go back to that dystopian future where you said where Let's start there. When you take a look at the systems and the geopolitical lines, the way they're drawn now, we're already there. We are already slaves to this system. We have been working in it long enough for enough generations to where most people just accept the system the way it is. It's starting to break. But you realize that it's already like that in the US specifically, and the US is so strong and powerful because most of the world runs on the US dollar. They have created this system where we in the US we really do control the spin of the world to some degree. And that is owned and operated and run by a select small group at the top, and it's under the guise of democracy and freedom that we don't really have. Right? There is your vote is not going to change anything. Governments as a whole naturally evolve into a destructive pyramid with a few on top and the huddled masses on the bottom. It's history. It's not like it's done even maliciously, right? This is the way an imperfect world works, especially when you're, built on a fiat system of lies, right? And so the more you study history, you realize this is, number one, we're already in it. And two, it's the natural progression of things. This is what is so exciting about Bitcoin. If you truly can create a new system of order, call it anarcho-capitalism, call it whatever you want, right? Where you can't take my money from me. And even if you force me to give you some, I can give you some, but you don't know for a fact that's all the Bitcoin I have, right? It's like this is a new level of freedom and sovereignty. And the reason it works and is incorruptible is because it follows the natural laws of the universe the way God designed it and intended it. I'm actually I've been writing some stuff, journaling and working on some things. The idea is that if God created the universe and the language he used to code the universe is math and physics. Science is just the study of those math and physics, right? But math and physics is the language that God used to create the universe. And the currency of the universe is energy, right? Because Bitcoin is a proof work system that operates on math and physics to define itself, and it utilizes energy to transform that energy directly into transactional units, not even value, right? The value is whatever we assign to it, but transactional units. It's the one true version of money that we can ever really have. I believe that we've probably had it a lot longer than 2009, right? If you look at Adam Back and these other guys that worked on cryptography and things, people have been working on it since the 50s and 60s for cryptographic messages and codes and things like that. They've just been suppressing it as much as they possibly can because it is and even the IMF or the WEF or somebody just came out, and said, we understand why impoverished countries would look to Bitcoin. It makes sense they would look to Bitcoin because of the control that we have. But if you go to Bitcoin, reduces our ability to help control your monetary policy. They're running out of lies. The lies are the same as the truth now. So if that happens, it's going to be a dramatic realignment. We will, and I don't think that the AI in and of itself is a danger or an issue. I really don't. Ultimately, we can still control it. The idea of that, I think the audacity that we're going to create a sentient being that is going to, take over the planet and destroy us, I think I just don't think God's going to allow it to happen.
I don't think that it, humans will become slaves to robots. Now, there will be some collateral damage
Yes.
Yes. And will it be at a scale like we've never seen before? I was having this conversation yesterday with a friend. There used to be ice delivery men who delivered ice to help refrigerate food. But now you have refrigerators, so that eliminated their job. But what happens when that type of thing happens at such a scale where it's 20-30% of the workforce, because even flipping burgers to open heart surgery can all be replaced with machines, and even the machines can fix the machines. So there's no human fingerprints on this enterprise anymore.
Well,
But maybe
there,
except for a few select rocket scientists and engineers who know how to fix them, and they
well,
are needed. But go
yeah,
ahead.
but everything that you're describing is how you do something, right? Like, how do you do laundry? All right. Well, we developed the washing machine and the dryer. Eventually, they'll develop a single unit. You drop your clothes in on one side, it sorts it all, and it comes out folded on the other side,
That would
right?
be nice.
Nobody's going to say, yeah, that we could do that now. We could do that now. It's just automation. It's how do you do something better? And that's what AI does. It helps us figure out how to do things better. It does not, and probably cannot ever, just wake up one day and say, hey, I want to, go to another planet. It takes a person like Elon Musk to say, we need to go to Mars. Why do we need to go to Mars? And all that AI is going to be able to do is take all of the data and all the information that has ever existed in and of it, and amalgamate it and brought it together, right? And formed it in a narrative to explain what we want to do. It doesn't decide we need to go to Mars, right? There's no logical reason for us to go to Mars. Right? If you look just at AI, there's no logical reason. There's no logical reason that I want a new clothes washer and drop my clothes in one, the dirty clothes in one side and it comes out folded in the other. And then you're like, well, now I don't even need a closet. I can just go and I can, get dressed right there in the laundry room or whatever. It's like all of these things will change and evolve, and that's fine. Will there be collateral damage? Yes, but there will not be as much collateral damage as if we continue down the path we're in anyway. This is what people don't understand, right? When I go back to the history of all these societies that are ever built on fiat or war and, the consolidation of power up the pyramid to the few that own everything and then the masses, it is and always has been and always will be in an imperfect world, right? This will happen. How much does that look like? How bad is it comparatively? I don't know. But I know that, history's going to tell. I know we're still here. We're still moving. We're still going. And we will evolve, or the people that don't evolve will disappear. That's the way it's always been. It's not a bleak outlook. It's literally just looking at the reality of things. And so we are in it and emotionally attached to it. So to us, it's the only thing that matters. It's the only important, right? It's like, how do I provide for my family? How do I make money? How do I do this? Our lives are a blink of an eye, right? I honestly, it's one of those things. And the older I get, the more I understand. It's like, people are like, oh, people in the past have been afraid of death. It's like, I need to make my life count. I need to make my life, I need to make it count. There are people that have completely changed history in very positive, meaningful ways that will never make it in a history book, that no AI search engine will ever talk about or know about. They will be forgotten, and they'll be long forgotten, right? I just want to do things the right way. So when I die and I go home, my God looks at me and says, hey, nice job. That's all I really worry about. So it gives me, that was a bit of a tangent, but it's just to say, it gives me a much different viewpoint and a much more optimistic viewpoint of this. When I hear about terrible things happening, when I hear about, pedophiles, and when I hear about wars, and when I hear about murder, I hear about all this evil stuff, I'm like, it doesn't really surprise me anymore. And some people are like, oh, you're old and jaded and whatever. And it's like, no, I have a peace that surpasses understanding, right? I know we live in a negative, terrible world. The AI, just like Bitcoin, is a tool. It can be used in a positive manner or a negative manner. So ultimately, it's going to be up to these people to do it. I believe wholeheartedly that the people that will suffer the most from the technology are the people that create it and use it for negative means. So let's say a company out of China comes out, somebody we've never even heard of yet, or that's working in the background right now comes out, and they create an Android better than, Optimus. And it's just all of a sudden it just proliferates into, the entire world, and every home has one and all this stuff. And it's doing all of this stuff. Well, it's doing all of it. And then people realize, oh, I don't need people to do this work for me anymore. And people lose their jobs and they can't afford things and all this stuff. Well, who's going to buy your robots, right? Eventually you're going to,
Well, that's why Elon Musk was talking about a UBI not being the worst thing in the world.
Well, UBI, but a UBI based on a infinitely inflatable currency would be the worst thing in the world. You know what I mean? If you're still talking about just making money out of thin air and sending it every year to somebody, but then it's in the system and then it can continue, right?
Yeah, you're relying on hundreds of millions of people pretending something is money.
Yes.
That's
So
what it
anything built on a lie eventually gets exposed. Anything built on a lie eventually gets exposed, whether that's AI, whether that's Bitcoin, whether that's dollars, whether that's government, whatever. Everything built on a lie eventually gets exposed because you can't deny the truth. As much as you want to believe you can fly, a human being can fly without the aid of anything else. If they jump off a cliff, they're going to plummet to their death. Ultimately, the truth comes out and the lie is exposed. That's okay. Is there collateral damage? Sure. But the collateral damage is usually those perpetrating the lie. The same way in previous societies, you've had a ruler that has gained control of everything, eventually gets overthrown, right? They're manipulating and abusing their power, and eventually the masses don't have it. Do some of those people in the masses die from starvation and hunger? Yes, but the ones that live go kill the ruler, right? It's a bloody takeover. Eventually, it all catches up, right? So I don't have a lot of, well, I do. I could paint my picture of what it looks like, right? But ultimately, no one knows other than these. It's just the same song, just a different verse.
I get that. I know I was reading how people, when the steam engine first came out, you look at a steam engine, it appears to be operating on its own, and people thought that it was sentient. People thought
Yes.
that a steam engine was sentient and that it would act on its own volition. And so I don't think being like sort of looking at new technologies and thinking, oh my gosh, this is gonna take over the world, like that's not new. But maybe it's just, to what extent will the collateral damage be?
I think the collateral
degrees
damage,
higher than higher.
Yeah. The collateral damage will be both negative and positive. I will feel terrible for all of the, attorneys and surgeons and stuff that are not necessary anymore. But at the same time, I think it will refine the type of person that goes into a specific job or industry. They will have to be the absolute best, the most creative. And what they will do is use these tools in a much more efficient and smarter way than just the average, student getting pushed through a university in these diploma mills could use these tools, right? So we will get innovation and we will refine who does what. And in that way, I feel like it's just a revert back to in the 50s and 60s when you're like, what do you do? Oh, I'm a NASA engineer, right? That was unique and special. You had to work very hard to get there. You had to be very smart. You had to be able to do all of these calculations manually, right? It's going to be the same way. It's just instead of a slide rule, we now have an LLM, right? Or we have some other form of AI tool built in that you have to know how to use. It will reset that, I think, in a positive way. Collateral damage, is the collateral damage just the lies being exposed that not everyone needs to go to college? Not everyone needs a degree? Not everyone needs this, needs that? All of that is an excuse for our government, at least it has been for quite some time, for our government to print money and issue debt into the system and further debase the dollar and keep us down.
And indoctrinate people. That's what I would say.
Yes. Yeah. Good little soldiers following the rules.
Yeah.
It starts in kindergarten and goes up through grad school. Actually, no, it goes through grad school and into the workforce, right? It's like, it's a whole system for your entire life. And between taxes and inflation, you're lucky if you get 10% of the value of your life by the time you're done.
Yeah.
So it's
I'm guessing you've read some John Taylor Gatto maybe at some point. Yeah.
Absolutely.
he's a person who's really shaped a lot of my views on education. I was a former teacher, and then Neil Postman is
Mhm.
somebody who, as of lately, been helping me think about technology and the pursuit of technological innovation.
Mhm.
And he's somewhat of a cultural critic. He says, every technology giveth and taketh away. He tends to focus on the taketh away part. And because I've been reading him a lot lately, that's sort of been, maybe been following him a little
In
bit.
your
But
lean. Yeah.
yeah, but I'm incredibly optimistic about the future. Like I'm not one of those people, but when it comes to the AI things, I just worry about such a huge removal of people from the workforce, and will it happen simultaneously? It's going to probably be slow, but where will meaning people who are pretty intelligent, able-bodied, can work, want to work. What are they going to dedicate themselves to? And so I just maybe new fields will come out of it, like entire new
Absolutely.
fields. Maybe people revert back to homesteading. Yeah, I think new fields might emerge, and things that we can't even conceive of right now that people will dedicate themselves to. But what I tweeted this out yesterday or the day before, like, I think it ultimately comes down to food, shelter, and property, and what does it take for somebody to live a thriving, resilient life? I think you have to maintain those things. And so maintaining your ability to possess those things and to, like, if you control a food, you can control, we were talking about this at the very beginning of the podcast. Like, if you can control the food, you can control population. And so my wife and I were sort of in the beginning of our homesteading journey. And in a world ruled and governed by AI, I think a really attractive lifestyle would be farming, like just farming for yourself, farming for your family, and maintaining a dignity of working with your hands and getting, being one with the soil, kind of. So I think that's a viable option for a lot of people if they start preparing now, because you're not going to be able to just do it overnight. But in a world where everybody's being displaced by computers and automation, if you can have that, you can have your property, you can have your shelter, you have your food, and you have your Bitcoin, like, you're a sovereign individual, and those things don't affect you as
Yes.
much.
I think that's probably one of the best kind of side effects of finding Bitcoin is I remember, laying in bed at night before finding Bitcoin, laying in bed at night, incredibly stressed because I didn't have any money coming in, or I had money coming in, but it was not enough to cover everything. And just every month it got worse and worse and worse, especially after you take a look at it after years. And it's just, where's all this work and effort I've put in gone? It's ridiculous. And I was the poorest I'd ever been in my life when I went all in Bitcoin. And other than sweating when I first, did my first on-chain transaction with so much value into cold storage, that was stressful until, you got the first confirmation on your transaction. Once I figured that out and I understood how it worked, I slept like a baby. And
Mhm.
purchasing dollar wise, I was still the poorest I'd ever been. You know what I mean? My first amount of Bitcoin was small. But I slept like a baby because for the first time ever, I put my value in an asset that couldn't be manipulated by the bank, by the government, even by the IRS, right? It felt sovereign for the first time. And it was also an asset that was liquid. So it's like, okay, if I need to spend it or I need to cash it out, it's like I can do that super easy, like very easily. And I'd done the homework to know how to do that. I could still spend Bitcoin in the United States, even if, somebody came and turned off all my credit cards and my bank accounts, right? Like I know how to get around that now. Though that feeling of freedom and sovereignty is like having FU money without having the dollars. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It is unbelievable the feeling you get. You feel like you can do anything. And after, 40 years of my life feeling hopeless and helpless, like I was always running behind on a hamster wheel, that was the most freeing feeling. And the only thing I can describe it to honestly is getting, baptized, accepting Jesus Christ. it's like two very different ways, right? But both very freeing from and leaving all the despair of this world behind and getting some hope, right? One was a hope for the first, getting baptized was a hope for me, right? Who didn't deserve it. All that grace was just overwhelming. But then the other, Bitcoin itself, is like having grace and hope again for not you, but your family and the people you provide for and the people you love and you want good things for. Those two.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one, and I've been telling this a lot lately, to people, but my son is 15, just got braces. Actually, my 19-year-old got braces too. He's not happy about it, but my 15-year-old got braces. And when we were at the office, he's like, yeah, by the time everything's said and done, it's probably going to be about $10,000, $11,000. I was like, okay, and you could tell he kind of clinched up when he said that because he gets a lot of people, just, they don't know how they're going to pay for it, right? It's frustrating. It's difficult to figure out. You're like, I want my child to have good teeth and a healthy life, but how am I going to pay for this? And I was like, okay, well, how do we take care of that? And my son at the time was like, Dad, it's like, that's a lot of money, right? So we walked out and he's like, Dad, I'm sorry. It's so expensive. I was like, well, actually, I've been buying Bitcoin for a long time. Your $10,000 braces, because Bitcoin was about right at $100,000 at the time. I was like, your $10,000 braces only cost Daddy $1,600. He's like, how is that possible? I said, well, it's because I bought Bitcoin at 16,000. And that math is not unilateral across, all of my stack, obviously, right? I buy Bitcoin at very different prices, but over a long enough time frame, because I bought Bitcoin in 2022 at 16,000, my life has gotten about 6 times easier, 7 times easier to pay for and to do good things for the people that I care about and I love. And it's given me the freedom and the ability to go pursue those new ventures, those new avenues that would not have been possible with fiat, right? So to tie that back into your AI side, right? If you use the tools properly, you can make your life and the life of others around you better. And ultimately, I think that's going to win out over the negative. We will have cycles. Right. But so it's important to understand that change, what can happen when you are in a world where you say no to the lies and the manipulation. That's what Bitcoin gives you the ability to do.
Yeah. I love that. And I love especially that you mentioned Jesus Christ, like as a Christian. I'm a Christian myself, so I appreciate that. And I do think it allows you to harmonize a lot of things with your faith, especially when you use a money that's not built on theft, right? Like, so that's one reason why I think you see a lot of Christians who really like Bitcoin. But I really appreciated this conversation, David. It's one of the longer ones. Usually I end like right around 55 minutes, but we've gone well over an hour at this point, and so I could probably talk to you for a few more hours.
Yes.
Hopefully we'll meet in person again at a conference one of these days. And so I'll put links to where people can find you, your X profile and things like that, but I'll give you the last word.
Yeah. I guess like a quick kind of last minute update on what I'm working on now. I believe that Bitcoin is the future financial backbone globally, right? It is going to be the future settlement choice for all financial institutions and sovereign individuals both. It's kind of amazing from that aspect. It can encompass all of it. So I'm working on that direction a little bit with some opportunities to kind of give people the chance to move easier onto a Bitcoin standard. Can't wait to kind of make that announcement. I've been very lucky to have been dragged into Bitcoin. I've always had people ask me, and it's like, I want to work in Bitcoin. What do I do? You buy Bitcoin and you study it and you keep living your life, right? Being a Bitcoiner at all, holding it at all, means you're working in Bitcoin, right? You're working towards that future of Bitcoin. So I just encourage you to keep learning about it, do what you can, take that first leap if you haven't, right? And then if you need help or assistance, reach out to any other Bitcoiner on the face of the planet. They will all help you. I have talked to people I am diametrically opposed to on some key Bitcoin issues, right? And when I talk to them and I mention something different outside of the issue, they are more than willing to help me. So there's something special about that sovereignty, about that freedom that comes with it. Reach out, get involved, stay involved. Obviously, X is a fantastic tool for that. Nostr is an even better tool for that. Learn about self-custody and cold storage. You don't have to keep all of your Bitcoin, but you should keep a big chunk of it. Whatever only put, it's like Sailor says, only put what you don't want to, the money you don't want to lose into Bitcoin, only put the Bitcoin you don't want to lose into cold storage, right? So that's super important as well. There will be other financial things coming down the pipe to help you better your life, but it's going to be bumpy. So make sure you are as sovereign as you can. Hold on to that Bitcoin. That way you get to decide who you are and what you do with it. Listen to Matthew because he's smart and he's talks to a lot of cool people.
I do talk to a lot of cool people. That part is correct. I don't know about the first one.
You're absolutely smart. And keep me posted on what the next time we meet in person. Maybe we can do a follow-up and we'll only talk about Brisket. We'll only do that.
Yeah, that'd be sweet. I am going to Thank God for Bitcoin in Dallas next year.
What year?
So, hey, maybe we'll see you there. I think it's April.
I'll probably be there at that one. So we'll figure. Let's do that. We'll get some. They
took a 2-year hiatus.
We'll get some barbecue.
Dude, that'd be awesome. I would love that. David, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Have a good one.